Hello everybody, my name is Grace. I am a polyglot. I love languages, but actually what I love more is communicating with people. So when I start learning a language from scratch, I make sure that I will be able to talk to people as soon as possible. So in this video, I want to give you some guidelines of how I would learn languages from scratch. The steps that I take into learning languages from scratch in order to be able to converse as soon as possible. Because I believe that if you can start conversing with people, you can start asking, what is this? What is that? You're learning through the language and you're not doing a translation. So I think this is an efficient way to learn languages. Keep in mind that this is what works for me. Other polyglot and other language learner might have different ways to approach the language because of different interests, different goals in language learning. But my goal is to be able to converse as soon as possible and to be able to understand and have fun talking to people. Learn the basics. Before I tell you what the basics are, I'm going to tell you where you can find them. The basics can be found in books, in videos, in blog posts. There's so many materials online. So what I always do when I start learning language from scratch is I'll go online. I will, let's say I'm learning Turkish. I'll type Turkish learning materials and I will download everything that I can find on the internet. Maybe I will have like 5 books that I found from the internet or that I buy from Amazon. And I will go through the chapters. I will choose out stuff that I need to know because I don't follow chapter by chapter in books because I feel like many things in books are made to waste your time. Because your goal, again, you have to stick to this goal, is to be able to talk to a person as soon as possible. So you cannot go through all this months and months of studies. Okay, so let's go to the basics. What are the basics? When I say basics, they are not colors, red, blue, yellow, green. They're not weeks of the weeks like Monday, Tuesday. They're not month. They're not table and chair because these words are not really frequently used in your first conversation. You have to think very well what you will be using in your first conversation. And I have listed 5 things that I look for, that I try to learn, that I consider as the basics before you really go and talk to the person. And it's right here. First, question words. You have to know and master all these question words. Who, what, why, where, when, how. You have to imagine a situation that you will really use these question words. So what? Where do you live? What do you do? What do you like? Why are you learning this language? When are you going to the country? Who do you like to talk to? All this kind of stuff are basic questions that you get asked by the person that you talk to. It can be a native speakers, it can be your friend, it can be people you find online, whoever. But this will be the base of your communication. And questions like what is very important to be able to ask. Because when you start learning a language, you will not know all the words. You will not be able to understand everything. And the tool that you have in your hand, like a blade, like to fight all these enemies, is what is. What is this? What is this word? What is dog? What is cat? Something like that. Or what is, and you can point at the thing. So it's very important to know the question words. Verbs, and important ones, not just random verbs. When I say important, I mean verbs that you will get to use it, that it will appear again and again, such as to go, to want, to like, to learn, to listen, to live, to be. Like all these words are so important. You will, in every conversation, it will appear again and again. And learn them in context. So don't just learn to go, but learn, I go to school. Don't just learn languages. Don't just learn to study, but learn, I study languages. Memorize them in sentence. Basic grammar structure. So what is that? That means you have to know how to place your word in a sentence to make a sentence that makes sense. Because, for example, if you are an English speaker learning Spanish, that would be easier than learning Korean. Because let's say Korean, the words are switched. In English, I eat food. In Korean would be I food eat, because all the verbs are at the back. So you have to know that the verb will be at the back. Where do you put this and that? That is what I mean. So you have to master all this in order to create a meaningful sentence. After that, after you know the placement of the words in a sentence, you need to know how to talk in present tense. That's the first thing. The second is past tense. And the third is the future tense. Depending on the languages, some language is easier to talk in the past tense. Let's say Thai, very easy, because in Thai there's no conjugation. You don't have to change. You can just say yesterday and everything becomes past tense. But let's say in Spanish, you have to conjugate them. In French, in Portuguese, you have to conjugate it in past tense. And that will take a little time to get used to. My tip for you when learning the grammar structure and all this past, future, present tense is to not ask questions, just memorize. I have write a sentence, long one, or a paragraph, and just memorize them. You'll get used to this kind of sentence, this order of words very, very soon, instead of trying to memorize. Okay, English is subject, verb, object. Korean is subject, object, verb, something like that. I have not mastered the terms and calling them yet, because you don't have to spend time memorizing all these terminologies for learning languages. You can just dive right in to learning languages. And the best way, I think, is just to memorize the whole sentence. Fourth point, important words that are related to you. So for me, what is related to me is language learning, language teaching, sport, exercise, swimming, playing piano, music. So the words that I will learn will be in this field. Let's say, because of my interest in this area, I will need to know the word teacher, the word student, online, office, classroom, swimming pool, piano, practice room, something like that. All these words that are related, plus traveling too. So I need to know the word for countries. I need to know a lot of words related to this field. So think about the field that you are interested in, that you want to be able to talk about, and learn all these words in this circle, in this area that you need to learn. And also very important to practice them in context. So now you have the verbs, you have the sentence structure, which is the basic sentences. Now you can make a complete sentence. I am a teacher. See? So memorize that in sentence. Not teachers means teacher, but say I am a teacher. I love swimming. Swimming. Don't just memorize swimming is swimming. Say I love swimming. Memorize like that. Conjunctions. When I talk about conjunctions, I mean words that will help you connect sentences, or words to make it longer and into a more complex sentences, or even a more complex paragraph. For example, the word like but, because, so, if, or, therefore, and all this stuff will make your sentence longer. Okay, so now that you know all these points, you can actually make more than 1,000 sentences. With all this, you can put them into patterns, and you can just put words in the blank. Let me show you. For example, I want to say, I like music because it's fun. I can use the same pattern to say, I like traveling because it's challenging. And I can make it longer. I can make it more complicated by saying, I like traveling because it's fun and challenging, but it's expensive. You see, you can always put conjunctions to change your sentence and make it longer. First tip, again, I want to repeat that you have to study everything in context. As in, don't memorize word by word. Don't say dog equals something, in another language. But write a sentence if it's the word dog that you want to remember. So say, I love dogs. Dogs are my favorite pets. Something like that. If you want to make a flashcard, do the same thing. Don't have English and the definition, but have it as a sentence at the back side. When you flip the card, you'll see the sentence. Second tip, what about languages that have their own alphabet? If I were to learn a new language, let's say Russian, which I really want to learn, I will start learning the alphabet right in the beginning, because I know that I'm gonna run into a lot of problem if I don't know how to read. I will be very limited to the materials that are Romanized, and I will not have a lot of I cannot pass this beginner step, because when you get to intermediate level, you will have to suffer the same thing. If you cannot read, you will have to start learning to read again. What about Mandarin? Mandarin doesn't have their own alphabet. They're all characters that you have to memorize one by one separately. So it's gonna take you a lot of time. I do recommend you to learn it if you want to get to a higher level. But at this level, if your goal is to just speak as soon as possible, I say that you can leave the characters for a while. Just learn from Mandarin. There are enough material. Pinyin. There are enough materials that teaches you through Pinyin, enough for you to go out and speak very soon. So how long would it take me to get the basics down? I don't like this question. It's really hard to answer. But if I have to say, I would say 1 month of studying, 2 hours per day. Actually, depending a lot on which language you speak already and which language you are learning. If it's language that are closer, they're gonna be easier, faster, and if it's harder languages, it's gonna take longer. Number 2, write your own story. What is that? Write your own story. So it's a story about your life. It's where you live, what you want, why are you learning, what do you want to be in the future, what did you want it to be, all this stuff related to you, all this life story that you have, that you can use it during your first conversation with another person. So what is the point of writing your own story? Usually when you talk to a person for the first time, you will talk about yourself. When you learn in a school, in the formal way of learning languages, actually you're learning through stories, but not your story. Usually if it's an English book, let's say Mr. Smith and Emma talking together. But no, we don't want to learn from other people's story. We don't want to learn how many kids they have. If you have kids, yeah, you're supposed to talk about your kids. If you don't have kids, you don't need to know about that other people have kids. You have to create your own story to be able to talk to the person about that. I'm gonna give you an example of my own story that I used when I was learning French, and this is the real story, and this is what I really used when I started learning French. This is my story that I used and I memorized in order to go out and talk to people. Here there might be some grammatical mistakes. Let's take a look a little bit at the first page. There are 3 pages here. See, I write that I live in Bangkok, I work with languages, I love languages, I speak many languages, I teach languages. How I feel about it is very important as well. If you want to read the rest of the story, I'm going to put a link in the description and you can take a look. Once you have your own story, now go find someone to check it. You can find a language partner online. You can go to italki Teacher, which I always use. You can send it to your friend who is a native speaker. And there's so many ways you can do to check your story. So have it checked, and if possible, ask that person to record the audio in slow speed and in normal speed, so that you can practice listening to that as well. So once that's done, I want you to memorize the story. And by memorizing, I mean you have to be able to say everything without looking at the paper at all. This is because in your first conversation, you get nervous because it's your first time speaking the language, right? You need to have, if you just understand your story, you will not be able to bring it and say it right away. It's not going to be at the tip of your tongue. That's why you have to memorize it and memorize it well. Prepare for your first encounter. This can be with a language teacher, can be with your language partner, or actually can be with a person on the street. So now you have your own story. Okay, that's really good. This is so important because this is going to be the answer for the questions that will get asked. So now imagine, prepare the questions that are going to be asked. Let's see, I can give you some really common ones. Why do you learn this language? When people ask you that, you already have your answer in store because you have already memorized that. You say, oh, because I want to live there, because I love this language. And another question, how long have you been learning this? You prepare already, right? In your script. You can pull that out and answer right away. When I started learning French, after 1 month, I have this story that I memorized, right? And I saw this a French couple in Thailand, and I approached them, and I was trying to use French with them, and they are like, "Wow, how long have you learned this language?" And they were asking me, "Why did you learn this language? Have you ever been to France?" And these are all easy stuff that I can pull out from my memorization, or this text story that I have about myself. If they were to ask me, let's say, what do you think about French society these days? I would not be able to answer that because that is not from my story. But imagine, only after 1 month, I could already talk and communicate and really interact with a French couple. Now is the moment that you've been waiting for. That is to go out and really talk to a real human. This can be offline, can be online. There's so many sites that you can find teachers, that you can find language partners. And if you happen to live in a place where there are speakers that you can talk to on the street, yeah, go out and do it. The point of this interaction is for you to repeat again and again the questions that you already prepared, the stories that you prepared. The more you repeat, the more it's ingrained in your brain, and the more you won't forget. So do it again and again. Find new teachers. If you use teachers online, you can book new teachers every time. Let's say 10, 20 teachers. Just say the same thing. They're gonna ask the same thing because the first encounter is always the same questions, always the same answers. Just keep talking the same thing, same story until you get tired. I remember when I was learning French, I think I used more than 50 teachers during my first stage of learning, all new teachers. One time. I just keep doing that until I get tired. And when you get tired, now it's the time to start the next step. Start learning from authentic materials as soon as possible. So if you're doing the basic books that you're doing, if you get to, let's say, lesson 17 out of 20, yeah, let it go. And stop doing that and now come to real authentic material. When I study from authentic material, I focus on 3 things. First is speaking with real people. So keep doing what you're doing. Go out and talk to people, find language partner, or get someone to talk to online, get a teacher even. The second thing is reading, very important as well. What I do is I will find a blog post online about subject that I'm interested in. So in my case, I'm very interested in language learning in general. So let's say I'm learning French. I will write in Google search, comment apprendre 2 langues en même temps. So how to learn 2 languages at the same time. There will be like many blog posts that I can click on. So I read each one of them. I like to use Google Translate to help me with words I don't know. And for this reading the blog post specifically, this one I like to use Readlang to help me with the words I don't know. Also, I use Link. It works really well for reading. The point of reading similar text and blog posts again and again is to reinforce the word that you already see. After you see the same word for, let's say, 5, 6, 7 times, you will remember it automatically and in different contexts. That is what we want. So one word being used in different contexts. Me personally, I don't use flashcards when I learn languages because I use this method of reading the blog post, the text of the same similar style, similar content again and again until I get used to the vocabulary. Listening comprehension. It's very important that you move on to authentic material as soon as possible because in fact what is written in language book is sometimes not really like what it is really spoken. Let me give you some example. Like let's say Korean, 나는 I, right? In Korean you like to shorten it to 난. Like in French, je suis is suis. Like what is that? Je suis and suis, right? Many times it happens, especially Indonesian. When I was learning Indonesian from the book, I learned for a year before I really started learning with authentic material. And when I started with authentic material, I was shocked because it's totally different. I've almost felt like I wasted all my time studying with the book. So yeah, so don't make the same mistake as I did and try to learn from the authentic material as soon as possible. So there's so many authentic materials on internet. You can find them on YouTube. For French, I love French Authentic and Inner French because they have long text with audio. So actually I can practice listening and also looking at the transcript at the same time. I think this is very important for your listening comprehension, not just listening. Because when you listen, you have to comprehend as well. You have to be able to understand. And the thing that will help you is the transcript. At my beginner to intermediate level, I always prefer to have transcript. That is why in my channel I have my transcript for people to learn from as well, because I think it's very important for learners to learn from transcripts. Some other materials that I use are easy languages. You can find that in YouTube. It's a YouTube channel where people go out and interview other people, and they have the transcript written out for you, so you can learn from the transcript. I also use I use Netflix, because Netflix has subtitle. Sometimes I watch a movie in English because I want to understand everything, and I put the subtitle in the language that I want to study. Let's say Portuguese, so that in case I read through and I find some word interesting, I'll pause and find out the meaning. So that is also helpful. Korean, Chinese, Japanese has a lot of podcasts that you can go find with transcript. And one thing that I want to stress on is that they should have transcript, and they should be the topic that you're interested in. Because if you're not interested in, maybe you will not be able to repeat the topic again and again, you know. So how long would it take you to get from level 0 to the level where you can understand many things, you can talk to people, have fun with the language? Maybe in a conversation class or with people, you're using only one language, the target language, but you might be still asking questions. What is this word? What is that word? Can you repeat it? Can you write it down? So that is the level that I'm talking about. I would say, if I have to say, I would say 6 months if you try hard. And it also depends on what language you already know. I'll tell you my experience. My Spanish and French, I studied really hard, at least 4 hours per day, every day. And within 3 months, I could already achieve this level. But for my Korean, which is, if you hear me speak Korean, it's one of my strongest language. It took me 4 years to get to a good level where I can stop depending on books. It's also because I started young and I didn't have any experience. What I did was I was just memorizing the book. Okay, it's really hard work. It's better than doing nothing, but it wasn't a good way to study because I was memorizing books. And when I was young, I didn't have internet. I didn't have anybody that I can talk to. I didn't have money to pay for the teacher to talk to me every day, you know? So at this point, I want to challenge you to learn through languages. So what is that? By that I mean you should be learning new skill through the language that you know. Although your knowledge right now is not enough to understand everything, but it's good enough for you to learn another skill. Let me give you an example. When I was learning French, at about the 6th month, I started learning chess. Like I took class with one teacher, actually one class with him, and I subscribed to like a YouTube channel and also a website where I can learn chess. So I had to read about the theory of chess, different ways you can win in chess, something like that. Really interesting. And for my, let's say, Portuguese, from the first month, I started going to classes, music classes. I was learning piano, and at first I didn't understand the teacher, when he was telling me, okay, Grace, move your right hand. I didn't even know the word hand at that moment, but through that I get to learn so many words. I get to interact with the teacher. If I didn't have the courage to go and learn the material, so learn through the language from the very beginning, I would miss a lot. I would improve so much slower. So I really encourage you to learn through the language. If you can be, you might be interested in sport, you might be interested in music, in science, in drawing, in programming, all of this stuff you can find. If you cannot find a live teacher like my music class, you can find so many on the website. Let's say Udemy. I bought so many classes on Udemy in Spanish, in Portuguese, in Indonesian, because I want to learn new skill through the language, and I really encourage you to do that. So to summarize, learning languages is a very adjustable process. By that I mean, me personally, I like speaking with people, so I would book a lot of classes online. I go out and make friends. I try to talk to people because I feel like that is what works for me, and it's easy for me. But if you like reading, if you like reading, you can buy a book and start reading and start like to treat it like a puzzle. It might be difficult at first. It's gonna get easier. If you like to listen to podcasts, to stories, do it. I think everything that you do in this area adds up to your skill. Another point that I want to stress on is that if you want to learn a language, you should jump right in and learn it. You can do some research about the resources that is good for you, but a lot of people, too many people actually, spend too much time doing research on like how to learn the language, how many hours would it take you, which app is better than which one, but they never start. The problem is not because they do researches, but the problem is because they don't start. So don't be that kind of person, and start what you want to do, which is learning language. I'll be making separate videos about each language that I know, and there I will share materials that I use to learn, that I use to teach, and the stuff that I feel like it's going to be useful to language learner. And if you find this video interesting, you can share it with people that want to learn languages. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, you can write them down in a comment, and I'm going to be answering the question. Thank you.